Yasmine, when the whole Salman Rushdie thing started in 1989, there was the whole London literary world, because he was a big pal of theirs, had no problem making a vigorous defense of free speech. It's all got a bit more cautious and equivocal since then. These aren't good times for free speech.
No, they're absolutely horrible times. After what happened at Charlie Hebdo, when all of those journalists were shot, the response was very different than the response that we had after Salman Rushdie's fatwa. At that time, the response was, well, why did they draw those cartoons? Well, they were being offensive. What did they expect Muslims to do? As if Muslims are a bunch of barbarians who can't control themselves, and as soon as any kind of cartoon is drawn, that we're supposed to assume that the reaction is to go around and murder people. Well, cartoons are drawn making fun of different religious people all the time. And we don't have the expectation that those people are going to run around shooting people or stabbing people. So why is there such a low expectation of Muslims? So the people that think that they're defending Muslims are actually insulting Muslims by saying, what would we expect? That's what we expect from them.
Because they're basically saying these are not humans, these are animals. They're like that meerkat, a vicious version of that meerkat that Nigel just had on his show. And they go crazy and they don't have rational human agency. I was reading your book over the weekend, and you have been a victim of Islamic violence from your first memories. Your first memories are of being beaten. It's very powerful like that. And then as I was reading it, I thought, you know, the fatwa guys won. You couldn't publish the satanic verses today. You can't write plays about this subject. You couldn't make a movie about this subject. Your book, you shopped it around to all the big name publishers, and none of them wanted to go near it. And the reason they didn't want to go near it is because they don't want what happened to Salman happening to them when they're in the lobby of their office.
Absolutely. And so the response to terrorism is not to cower and to capitulate. It was Salman Rushdie who said it himself. He said, terrorism is simply the art of fear. And so you have to decide, you have to choose to not be afraid. And so when we capitulate, when we respond by saying, okay, we're not going to publish these books, okay, we're not going to publish these cartoons, okay, we're not going to criticize this religion that very, very dearly needs to be criticized, then what they're doing at that point is they are empowering the extremists and the terrorists to continue their extremism and continue their terrorism because they know that nobody's going to get in their way.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it is I'm getting the sense that although they quite obviously they want to behead Wilders, they seem to want to behead J.K. Rowling too. I'm sure they'd quite enjoy that. But in a certain sense, with every passing year, they have to do less and less of that because we're all going quietly into the long, dark night in which there is no free expression.
Useful idiots. Just a gaggle of useful idiots behind them. So they say Islamophobia is fear of Islam. And if you are Islamophobic, then you are a bad person. They have created this term, this nonsensical term, because as you and I both know, there is nothing more rational than fearing this ideology that encourages this kind of violence. But they can come up with their nonsensical word, and they can come up with their nonsensical definition, and they are surrounded by Western liberals who are willing to parrot this same nonsense. They don't even have to do the work themselves.
You know, I remember the English novelist Fay Weldon back in the 90s. She was asked about Islamophobia. It must have been one of the first times that word was used on British television. And Fay Weldon replied, well, look, if it's Islamophobic to object to my friend being targeted for murder, then yes, I'm Islamophobic. And maybe if we'd all done, when this word came up, if we'd all just said, yeah, I am Islamophobic, you want to kill my...
So.
Yeah. Are you concerned that with every one of these headlines, you mentioned in your tweet some of the things we forget, a school teacher beheaded in France. There's a school teacher in northern England, I assume he's still in the north, who has been in hiding for over a year. These are not the celebrity cases, but the celebrated ones, the ones we remember, from Rushdie to the Mohammed cartoons in Denmark, to the Charlie Hebdo massacre in Paris, and now to the Rushdie attack. There's the response from the Western establishment seems to be getting feebler and feebler.
Yes, absolutely. And if you remember Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who was attacked on the same day that Theo Van Gogh was killed, same thing, for making a film, a very short film. The response from her government was to call her an Islamophobe. She was a member of parliament at the time in Holland, and she had to flee the country. They took away her citizenship. So we already saw in the distance between Rushdie and Hirsi Ali the difference between the responses of the so-called free world.